Finally tonight here, our Made in America is back, and so is a longtime summer tradition, hitting the open road.
Total RV shipments in May were the biggest on record, up 11.8% year.
The average new motorhome now costs more than the median American home did a generation ago. Right now, brand new trailers are rotting on dealer lots that haven't moved a single unit in over a year. This industry shipped 600,000 units in one record year, and then watched demand fall off a cliff. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why. And I mean exactly, not vibes, not one bad brand, the whole system. Subscribe so I can keep making these videos. My goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of July. Let's start with the simplest thing, the sticker. A basic entry-level travel trailer, the kind a young family tows behind the minivan, now starts around $20,000. Mid-range trailers most people actually want run $30,000 to $60,000. Fifth wheels blow past $100,000 without trying. Once you get into motorized rigs, the numbers get absurd. A Class A motorhome averages somewhere between $100,000 and $600,000. The luxury diesel pushers, the ones you see rolling down I-75 toward Florida every winter, can cross $2 million. $2 million for something that sleeps 4 and gets 8 miles to the gallon. Even the trendy camper vans, the ones every influencer films their morning coffee in, routinely run $150,000 to $300,000. That's a van with a bed in it. Here's the part that should bother you. These prices spiked during the pandemic, when everyone was stuck home and desperate to get outside, and they never came back down. Even the people selling these things admit it. The CEO of Camping World, the largest RV dealer in the country, has said publicly that affordability is the #1 thing on his customers' minds, and that rising prices are killing demand. So what did the industry do about it? Not build a better camper for less. They invented a term for the workaround, decontenting. That's the real industry word. Strip out features, use thinner walls and cheaper components, then sell you the gutted version at a slightly lower price so it looks like relief. You're not paying less, you're getting less. There's a difference, and they're betting you won't notice until you're 300 miles from home. Picture a guy outside Tulsa who saved for years to take his kids on the road the way his own dad did. He walks the lot, sees a trailer he likes, and the price on the window is more than he paid for his first house. He runs the numbers on a 15-year loan and realizes he'll be paying this off until his youngest is in college. So he walks. That's not a one-off story. That's a Saturday in every state right now. Price would almost be forgivable if what you got was solid. It isn't. When demand exploded during the pandemic, factories in Indiana ran the assembly lines flat out, pushing units off the line faster than anyone could properly inspect them. What came out the other end is, plainly, a lot of junk. Lemon law attorneys across the country report the same complaints on repeat. Water leaks behind the walls, delamination, where the outer skin peels off the trailer body like sunburn, soft, rotting roofs on units barely a year old, jammed slide-outs, failing electrical systems, and these aren't no-name brands. Forest River, owned by Berkshire Hathaway, Keystone, Jayco, Heartland, even Airstream, the brand that's supposed to be the gold standard, shows up in lemon law filings. Take a retired couple near Asheville who cashed out part of their savings for a fifth wheel to finally see the country. 6 weeks in, a stain appears on the bedroom ceiling. By the time they get it to a dealer, the roof is rotting and the wall is soft to the touch, and the service department is backed up 6 weeks, understaffed and drowning in warranty work. Their $90,000 dream sits in a repair bay while they sleep in a motel. If you're charging someone the price of a house for a box on wheels, keeping the rain on the outside of it feels like a reasonable baseline. And some of these defects aren't just annoying, they're dangerous. In a single month in late 2025, regulators logged more than a dozen separate RV recalls spanning Jayco, Heartland, Fleetwood, Forest River, Coachman, Thor Motor Coach, and Winnebago. Thor Motor Coach recalled over 4,000 motorhomes because slide-out rooms could deploy themselves while the vehicle was moving down the highway. Forest River recalled over 4,000 trailers over detachable steps. Winnebago pulled back more than 5,000 travel trailers over a cooktop circuit board that could overheat. In that 1 month alone, Regulators flagged over 3,000 RVs across 7 manufacturers. This isn't a few bad apples, it's the orchard, rewritten to keep RV-specific and general auto market data clearly separated, no blending. Now here's where it turns, from infuriating to genuinely alarming, how people are financing these things. RV loans aren't like car loans. They stretch 15, sometimes 20 years. Dealers sell you on the low monthly payment, and most buyers don't run the long math. That math is brutal. A brand new RV loses more than 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot, and keeps bleeding value every year after. Within 12 months, a lot of owners are underwater, owing more than the thing is worth. To be precise about what we know, RV-specific, industry-wide delinquency data isn't published the same way auto loan data is. What is well documented is the broader vehicle lending environment RVs are financed inside. Subprime auto borrowers hit a 60-plus day delinquency rate of 6.56% in early 2025, the highest reading since this data series began in 1994, and it climbed to 6.74% by year's end. Vehicle repossessions overall hit roughly 1.73 million in 2024, up 16% year over year and 43% versus 2 years prior. That's not an RV-specific statistic, and I want to be straight with you about that. But RVs are financed on longer terms, against assets that lose value faster, by a lot of the same stretched household budgets showing up in those numbers. When money gets tight, the toy in the driveway is usually the first thing to go. And repo lots around the country are filling up with campers families couldn't hold on to. That's the honest version of the connection. Not proof of an RV-specific crisis, but a system under real strain feeding directly into RV affordability. If customers are stretched, dealers are getting crushed from the other side. Lazy Days was one of the largest RV retailers in the country. Stock once traded above $100 a share, sales peaked at $1.33 billion. Then it fell apart, a loss of almost $9 per share in a single year, tens of millions burned through. By late 2025, it had agreed to sell off nearly all its dealerships and moved to delist from NASDAQ entirely. Camping World, the industry's giant, cut more than 900 jobs in a year, shut or consolidated 16 locations, and is sitting on roughly $2.5 billion in debt against only a couple $100 million in cash. Its stock fell around 57% in a year. It paused its dividend just to protect the balance sheet. The mechanism strangling dealers is one most buyers have never heard of: floor plan financing. Every camper on a lot was bought with borrowed money, and the dealer pays interest on it every day it sits unsold. When trailers gather dust for 300, 400, 500 days, that interest eats a dealership alive. Picture a family-run RV lot in rural Missouri, open 30 years, watching unsellable units rack up interest they can't cover, while new models are priced out of reach and the used trade-ins nobody wants pile up on the back row. They won't make it to next season, and the big chains are already circling. All of this lands hardest on the people who actually build these things. Elkhart County, Indiana is the capital of American RV manufacturing. Something like 46% of local jobs are tied to it. When the industry booms, Elkhart booms. When it busts, Elkhart bleeds. And right now, it's bleeding. Unemployment in the area has nearly doubled from the boom years. Forest River closed plants in Goshen, shut facilities in California, and laid off workers across Elkhart and Bristol. In summer 2025, hundreds more jobs disappeared across Heartland, Cruiser RV, and other shops, and a plant just over the line in Michigan shut completely. These are people who built campers for 15, 20 years, going home to tell their families the line is closing. And here's the number that ties it together. While Elkhart workers were losing their jobs, the men at the top were paid. Thor Industries' CEO took home about $14.6 million in his most recent fiscal year, in a stretch where Thor's revenue fell from over $16 billion to under $10 billion, a drop of more than 40%. Winnebago's CEO took home around $9 million. A top parts supplier executive pulled in over $10 million. And Camping World's chairman signed a new pay package worth roughly $30 million for a year in which the company's stock was cut in half and 900 employees lost their jobs. To be fair, most of that pay is stock and bonus tied to formulas set by compensation committees, not cash pulled straight out of the operating budget. That's worth knowing before you picture it as a literal one-for-one trade against layoffs. But the optics and the incentive structure they reveal speak for themselves. When your company is losing money, your stock is collapsing, and you're cutting the factory floor, that's not the year most people would expect the biggest raise of the decade. This isn't new. Rewind to 2008, 2009, the last time easy money dried up and the RV bubble popped. Monaco Coach filed for bankruptcy and cut its workforce from around 6,500 people to barely 200. Fleetwood Enterprises filed for bankruptcy weeks later and shut its entire travel trailer division. Elkhart County unemployment shot past 18%, the worst in the state. Industry shipments cratered to about 165,000 units. Then it came back. Loans got loose again, the pandemic sent demand into the stratosphere, and the industry shipped 600,000 units in 2021 to our Sears, an all-time record. And then, just like before, the bottom fell out. Shipments crashed from that peak down to around 313,000 in just 2 years, a drop of nearly 48%. Same cycle, same overbuilding, same financing, same crash. New addresses the no counter voice gap directly, then responds instead of dismissing in one line. Now, to be fair, the industry's defenders have a real argument, and it deserves airtime. They'll point out that shipments have ticked up over the last 2 years off the 2023 bottom, that the trade group is forecasting continued growth, and that every cyclical industry, housing, autos, boats, goes through exactly this kind of correction after a demand spike. On a spreadsheet, that can look like a normal, healthy reset, not a collapse. Here's my honest response to that. A correction and a collapse can be the same event, depending on where you're standing. A modest national uptick in shipments doesn't undo a dealership delisting from NASDAQ, a factory town's unemployment rate doubling, or a family sleeping in a motel while their $90,000 trailer rots in a repair bay. Both things can be true. The industry as a whole may stabilize, and real people are absorbing real losses on the way there. That's not a contradiction. That's what a correction actually costs, and who actually pays for it. Every piece of this connects. Prices that locked out the middle class. Quality problems from rushed assembly lines. Recalls that put families at real risk. Long loans against fast depreciating assets. Dealers buckling under floor plan debt. Workers in Elkhart losing their footing. And executives at the top collecting 8- and 9-figure paychecks while it all comes apart underneath everyone else. The RV Trade Group releases its next shipment forecast, and manufacturers report earnings later this year. Whatever the numbers say, I'll break them down for you, straight with the sourcing shown, not just the scariest stat in the pile. If that's the kind of channel you want more of, subscribe. I'm aiming for 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, and everyone helps me keep doing this the right way.